Good morning, everyone. Good to be here with everyone. It's a beautiful day. Sometimes Mother's Days, you never know what you're going to get weather-wise, but we have a beautiful Mother's Day today. And I would encourage you to, if you haven't already, call your mom. Talk to your mom. Really, it's easy to forget, it's easy to get busy, and it's easy to think, well, Mom knows I love her. And she probably does, but she likes to hear it. And we all like to be said thank you to, and that's really the point of this. Mother's Day doesn't make mothering any more important. Mother's Day doesn't make, a mom a better mom. Mother's Day is really a chance for us who have moms to just say thank you. So I'll just encourage you to do that. If you're a little one, say thanks, Mom. If you're an older one like me, call your mom and tell her, Mom, I love you. Thanks so much. We're gonna go walking down. My mom went to college here in Eau Claire many years ago, and so every Mother's Day, our tradition is we go to Herbert's and Gerbert's because she likes Herbert's and Gerbert's, and then we walk down to Little Niagara Creek, where the creek flows into the Chippewa River right down on campus. So that's our Mother's Day tradition. So we're heading there after this, and we do it rain or shine. So I'm very grateful for today because it's much nicer. We are continuing on in our series in Genesis. We've been walking through Genesis for some time, and we are picking it up again. Just a reminder of what we're about here. Genesis is a interesting book. It's a powerful book in many ways. The Bible was written to speak to us in so many ways, and Genesis is like that. And just a reminder what Genesis is about. We believe Genesis to be a historical account. God wrote this down for us, and it helps us to understand some things. First of all, Genesis helps us to understand God's plan to redeem mankind, because we see in Genesis, in the very beginning, we see how God created the world. God made humans, and we interacted with God. Adam and Eve saw God face to face, and there was a relationship there, but then sin entered the world, and sin broke that relationship. And so Genesis now, much of it is laying that reality out, but then talking about and helping us to understand God's plan to redeem us. When we broke our relationship with God because of sin, God then began his plan to bring us back, to restore that relationship. And Genesis is very much about that. We've been looking at a guy called Abraham and his descendants, and how God had made a promise to Abraham. It's through your descendants, Abraham, that I'm going to bring people back to me. And we can carry that all the way down to Jesus. When Jesus was born, God himself came into the world through the line of Abraham and paid the penalty for our sins to open the door for us to come back. So Genesis is laying out God's plan to redeem us, to bring us back into a relationship, but it's also doing something else. It's teaching us about who God is. You see, Adam and Eve could see God and talk to him, and so they could learn about him firsthand, face to face. We can't. We don't see God. There's that separation because of sin. But God wants us to know him, and so he's teaching us about himself in Genesis. Hey, this is who I am. This is what's important to me. This is how I think. This is how I act. He wants us to understand him, and Genesis is a big part of that. He's laying out who he is and what he does, but he's also teaching us about ourselves. This is who you are, Rob, and each one of you, made in my image. You have the capacity to do things that the rest of my creation can't do. I've given you responsibilities. But you also have this proclivity to sin and to rebel against me. And so God is helping us to understand ourselves. There's a reason for that. And it's those two things, God's plan to redeem mankind and teaching us about God and ourselves, really is designed to restore and build our relationship with God. God wants you to have a relationship with him. He wants you to have that relationship begin again. The New Testament talks about being born again. It's like I was dead, but now I'm alive. I was separated from God, but now I'm with God again through Christ. That's restoring that relationship. But once that relationship is restored, God says, good, now I want to build it. I want you to know me better. I want your relationship with me to be growing. And so that's why we read Genesis. That's what we're looking for here. It's not just stories. It's stories with a purpose, and this is what it's for. So that's what we've been doing. We've been walking through Genesis for some time with this as the backdrop. And I mentioned where we've been for a long time in Genesis is with Abraham. We talked about creation, we talked about the fall of mankind, how humans sinned, we talked about Noah and the flood. Now and then we got into Abraham, and God made promises to Abraham, and God said, Abraham, through you, I'm going to bring a Savior into the world. And so we've been following Abraham and his descendants because God said it's through your descendants that this is going to happen. And so we've been walking through. We started with Abraham and looked at the things we see about him. Abraham's son Isaac came along miraculously, and God saved Isaac, and then we saw how Isaac kind of grew up and he got married. Now, today, what we're going to do is we're looking at a snapshot of the people in this story, if that makes sense. And by story, I don't mean a fictional story. This is really what happened, but we're looking at a snapshot of what happened to some of these people in that line, in Abraham's line, as God is working through people to bring Jesus into the world. And so we're looking at a specific instance that happens here. And the instance is in Genesis. We're biting off a big chunk today. Genesis 26 through 34, all the way through Genesis 28:9. And it's a story of Isaac and Rebekah and their two sons, Jacob and Esau. And we started to talk about these people here already, but there's a specific instance in this family that we're going to look at today, and it's the situation where Jacob steals Esau's blessing, okay? So this is a snapshot. We're looking at one event in the life of these people. By the way, if you don't have one, you might want to go grab one of these little sheets because you can follow along. It's helpful, I think, to take notes. But let me tell you kind of how we're going to do this today, because it's going to be a little bit different than we normally do. Normally, we'll read the story and we will draw some lessons from it. Again, because God wrote this so that you and I can learn. God wrote this book and we study it so that we can understand how to impact or how to live our lives today. We're going to get to that, but we're going to get to that part, the application part, next week. This is really a two-parter. This is where they divided The Hobbit into 3 movies, and you got to wait for. We're going to have to wait till next week to get the application points because this story is so big. So today what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the story. We're just going to read it chunk by chunk, make some comments about it, and the purpose of today is to get a picture of what happened, what went on here, maybe some questions as to why it went on, or get some insights into this situation, okay? So we're going to walk through the story today, make some comments about it. When we get done to the end of the story, I'm going to tease it a little bit and tell you what the 2 big lessons I think are, but then we're going to unpack them next week, all right? So you're going to have to come back. For you old people, this is like Batman. Remember the Batman series? Yeah, all the old people are laughing because they know. They'd get to the end of the 30-minute Batman show. This is with Adam West, who is Batman, and he'd be tied to a saw almost every time and be moving toward the saw, and then it would stop and say, will Batman escape? Will the Joker steal the money? Tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. But anyhow, you're going to have to tune in next week to get the rest of this story. All right, you ready? You clear on what we're doing? We're going to look at this snapshot of this picture. Today we're asking the question, what happened and why, and how can I understand this? And then next week, we'll take up the question, all right, what does that mean to me? What do I do with that? So, if you have a Bible, you can open it up. We're going to start reading here in Genesis chapter 26, verse 34. But actually, it's probably be helpful, before we jump into it, to give just a little bit of the framework of what's happened so far. What's the atmosphere that this story is unfolding in, okay? What's happened up to here to kind of create the circumstance that this story is unfolding in. And if you've been here for all of the Genesis series, we've talked about these things, but just quickly to remind us, some of the things that have happened in the past that are shaping what's happening now are, one thing is God has made this promise to Abraham and Isaac regarding his descendants. We've talked about that. So much of the story here starts with God made promises to Abraham. He said to Abraham, Abraham, your descendants are going to be so numerous that you won't be able to count them all. They're going to outnumber the sands of the sea. These descendants that are going to come are going to possess this land of Canaan. I'm going to give it to you and your descendants. Abraham, I'm going to watch out for you and your descendants. Those who bless you, I'll bless. Those who curse you, I will curse. I'm going to care for you. And Abraham, through your descendants, all of the world is going to be blessed. God made these promises to Abraham. He was clear with Abraham. This is what I'm going to do with you. Abraham believed it. Abraham lived his life trusting that those things were going to happen. It's the same with Isaac. Abraham almost certainly told Isaac these things, but then we see where God told Isaac the exact same things. Isaac, you're Abraham's descendant, and so all those promises I made to him, now I'm making them to you. You're going to have descendants that are going to outnumber the sands of the sea. Your descendants, Isaac, are going to take this land. I'm going to bless those, Isaac, who bless you. I'm going to care for you. And Isaac, through your descendants, all the world will be blessed. So Isaac here, who is one of the main characters in this story, has been living his life with those promises in mind. His dad told him, God told him, Isaac expects that this is what his life is about. So that's one thing that's happening. Here's a second one. God had spoken to Rebekah. If you remember, Rebekah is Isaac's wife. Right? I'm getting the names right? I was explaining this to my wife, and I kept mixing up the names. If I mix up the names, on the back of this sheet, I wrote them down. Abraham marries Sarah, Isaac marries Rebekah, Jacob and Esau are their kids. So if I mess up the names, forgive me, look at the back. Isaac married Rebekah. They weren't having kids, if you remember the story. Isaac prayed for Rebekah. She got pregnant, but there was this, her pregnancy was physically strange enough where she went to God and said, what is going on? God said something to her. You remember what he said? There's 2 nations in your womb. Two boys are in there, and the older boy is going to serve the younger boy. Well, that's in Rebekah's mind. Then she did. She had these 2 sons. And so Rebekah is in this situation where, okay, she's probably, almost certainly heard Isaac's promises, the promises that God made to Isaac. Okay, God told my husband that he's going to bless the whole world through his descendants. Well, God told me something else, something in addition to that I'm going to have these 2 boys. And Esau was the firstborn, and then Jacob. They were twin boys, but Esau was born first. And God told Rebekah, the older son is going to serve the younger son. That's in her mind. That's in her head. She heard that right from God. And she believes it, and so she's operating like that, okay? So Isaac is operating along the paradigm of these promises. Rebekah has heard the promises, but she also heard God say something about her 2 boys specifically. Here's a third thing that's going on, and we talked about this a few weeks ago. Isaac and Rebekah, we don't know exactly why, but Isaac and Rebekah played favorites. Isaac loved Esau. Esau was kind of the manly man. He was the hunter and hairy. He looked, he's just kind of the redneck hunter dude. Isaac loved Esau. Jacob said was a quiet man, stayed among the tents. Rebekah loved Jacob. And it was very clear, apparently, this wasn't, you always ask your mom, who did you like more? And the kids always, claim, oh, dad liked, mom liked you best. I kind of, it's true, right? Absolutely, mom liked my sisters better. But here, you get the impression that there was no question about it. It was clear. Dad likes Esau. Mom likes Jacob. That is playing into, that is part of the atmosphere that this story is going to play out in. One more thing here, and we saw this the last time we looked at Jacob and Esau. Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. Jacob took advantage of his brother. The birthright has to do with the inheritance primarily. As the firstborn son, Esau had the right to double the inheritance. So if whatever Jacob got from mom and dad, Esau got twice as much. That's his birthright. He came in, he was hungry. He said to Jacob, who had food, "Give me food." Jacob said, "I'll give you food if you give me your birthright." And Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. Impetuous and foolish on Esau's part, probably manipulative and taking advantage on Jacob's part, but that has impacted the relationship of these brothers, okay? So all of this, these four people involved in this story today, Isaac, Rebekah, that's mom and dad, Esau and Jacob, that's the boys. This is the kind of the family dynamic that's going on as we look today at this snapshot. So I'm going to just start reading. We're going to read a little bit, make some comments, read a little bit, make some comments. And I'm in Genesis 26. I'm going to start reading with verse 34. It says, "When Esau was 40 years old, he married Judith, daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Basemath, daughter of Elon the Hittite. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah." Okay, just a couple things here. We see another source of discord, if there wasn't enough already, another source of kind of tension in the family, and it has to do with Esau and his wives. There's discord over Esau and his wives. And a couple of just things to recognize here. One, it's interesting that Esau is 40 years old here, and so Jacob is as well. At this point, Isaac would be 100 because he was 60 when these boys were born. So Isaac's 100 years old. But the brothers are 40 years old. Esau's married, probably out of the house, has his own place. I'm guessing he has 2 wives. And so he's kind of taken flight. We're going to see here Jacob hasn't. Jacob's not married. He's probably still living at home, perhaps. Or at least he's still much more connected to mom and dad. So the 2 boys have kind of taken different tracts of life. Esau has kind of stepped out. He's making his way in the world. He's got wives. Jacob, he's still at home at 40. And if your son is home at 40, at least in our culture, that's a thing. Maybe it was a little less back then, but still, it's something. It's something to recognize. These 2 boys are in very different places in their life. And it says that there's grief, was a source of grief. That's interesting to me, that Esau's wives are a source of grief to both, to Isaac and Rebekah. So Esau married these women, and there is tension now, not just between Jacob and Esau and mom and dad, but you've brought these daughters-in-law in, and so the tension is building. Let's put it that way. If it wasn't bad enough before, now Esau has wives that are a source of grief. And that has to be a hard family situation, doesn't it? I mean, all of these things that are conspiring to, when these people get together, you just wonder how they interact with each other. You just wonder what they think about each other. But that's what happens. So let's jump, or let's keep going. Chapter 27, I'm going to read verses 1 through 4. It says, "When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could no longer see, he called for Esau, his older son, and said to him, 'My son.' 'Here I am,' he answered. Isaac said, 'I am now an old man, and don't know the day of my death. Now then, get your weapons, your quiver and bow, and go out to the open country and hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die.'" Isaac intends to do something here, and really what he says is that he says to Esau, I intend to give you my blessing. I've decided I'm going to do something, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my blessing. Now again, a couple things to think about here. I'd mentioned this earlier. Isaac's 100 years old at this point, and he says, I don't know when the day of my death will come. I suspect Isaac is looking at this kind of in light of the promises that God had given him. Remember, because Isaac realizes that, okay, God's going to do all these amazing things, but it's through my descendants. And so I got 2 boys. And one of them is going to be, part of this promise of God. And God's going to use my boys, and I'm not sure which one, but I think he's probably thinking about that. He's thinking about, I want to see God's promises happen, and here's my two boys. Well, I'm going to bless Esau. In other words, I think Isaac is thinking, I'm going to kind of follow through on the promises of God, but I'm going to make it go a certain way. Remember, Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob. Now, a couple of things that we don't know here, and it's always interesting to recognize in stories like this what we don't know. We don't know if Isaac knows about Esau selling his birthright to Jacob. We don't know if Isaac knows that story. I suspect he probably does, but we don't know for sure. But maybe he knows, Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. Here's another thing we don't know. We don't know for sure if Rebekah told Isaac what God had said to Rebekah. Remember, what did God say to Rebekah? The younger is going to serve the older. We don't know for sure that Rebekah said that to Isaac. Again, I suspect she did. I suspect that Isaac knows that. So here's my speculation, and you can take this for what it's worth. I suspect that Isaac is looking at what's happening here. My wife thinks that Jacob is going to be the one that God uses. My older preferred son sold his birthright. Everything is lining up so that Jacob is going to be the one that God uses. But Isaac loves Esau. I want it to be Esau. I'm speculating there. I'm speculating. But as I look at the story, it wouldn't surprise me if Isaac is saying, you know what, Esau, you need some help, buddy. I'm going to do something here to change the tables. I'm going to give you my blessing. And he kind of decides to make it an event. He says, he could have just done it. Isaac could have just said, Esau, come here, I'm going to give you my blessing. But he said, no, let's make it a deal. Go out and get me the food that I like. Let's make this something between you and me. Because it says, why did Isaac love Esau? Because Esau was a man of the open field. He was a hunter. Probably a good cook from what you can kind of tell here. And so Isaac says to Esau, hey, buddy, this is between you and me. Let's make this an event. You and I are going to make this right again. All of the stuff that's been going on in the family, it's no good. It's no fun. These things have happened, but let's do something to kind of get things going in the right direction, and let's have it be between you and me. Go hunt, because I love it when you do that. Make the kind of food that you and I love to have, and then bring it to me. We're going to eat this together, and then I'm going to give you my blessing. This is an event. He's making it an event for his older preferred son. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 5. Verses 5 through 17. Now Rebekah was listening as Isaac spoke to his son Esau. When Esau left for the open country to hunt game and bring it back, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, look, I overheard your father say to your brother Esau, bring me some game and prepare me some tasty food to eat, so that I may give you my blessing in the presence of the Lord before I die. Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies. Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, but my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I'm a man with smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing. His mother said to him, my son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me. So he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and she prepared some tasty food just the way his father liked it. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of Esau, her older son, which she had in the house, and put them on her younger son Jacob. She also covered his hands and the smooth part of his neck with the goat skins. Then she handed to her son Jacob the tasty food and the bread she had made. All right. What's happening now? Well, Rebekah and Jacob are conspiring to deceive Isaac. Rebekah heard this. Your dad's going to bless your older brother. we need to do something about this. And so she conspires with Jacob to deceive Isaac. Now, some things to think about in here. Here's one. Rebekah believed that the blessing was very, very important. Rebekah thought that this blessing was real. Basically, that if Isaac blessed Esau, it was going to change the future. It was important enough where, hey, we can't let your dad bless Esau because that's going to change something. He needs to bless you instead, because in Rebekah's mind, this blessing was prescriptive, if you will. In other words, I think Rebekah believed that whatever Isaac says, okay, Esau, I bless you in this way, that's going to happen. It's going to shape and change the future. I think Rebekah believed that, and I think Jacob believed it too. Which is interesting because you know, when I don't feel like I can shape my kid's future just by my words or just by saying, hey, son, Sam, this and this and this and this and this is going to happen to you, and go. I don't feel like I can change his future that way. It seems as though these folks, Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob and Esau, thought that that was possible. That Isaac could give a blessing that would shape and change the future. Now, is that possible? Maybe. There's a couple of times in Genesis that we've seen people give a blessing already. Noah blessed and cursed his 3 boys, if you remember. He made a pronouncement about all 3 of his boys. Rebekah, when she left home as a young girl, had been given a blessing, kind of like this. So there is some precedent for this thing of a blessing to happen, but we don't know if God somehow is giving Isaac the ability to shape the future or not. An interesting note, this is just, if you want to read about this more, this is a really helpful book. It's called Biblical Literacy. It's by a Jewish rabbi, Joseph, I can't pronounce his last name. But he makes commentary about the Old Testament from a very Jewish point of view. It's just helpful. It's really interesting. If you want to borrow this to read, you can, but you need to give it back. Or you could just go buy it. It's not that expensive. Biblical Literacy. This guy doesn't believe that the blessing was prescriptive. In other words, he doesn't believe that Isaac had the power to change the future. But regardless of what you and I believe, regardless of what he believes, Rebekah did believe it. Rebekah believed it. And this was so important to her, it changed the way she acted. It changed the way that she interacted with her family. The only thing that I tried to think of what's a similar thing in our culture, and the only thing that I've seen is, it's not exactly the same, but I have seen people who believe that their inheritance is so important it changes how they deal with their parents and their siblings. In other words, it's so important who gets grandma's wedding ring that I'm going to change fundamentally how I view and treat my siblings and my parents, depending on who gets the wedding ring. Does that make sense? It's something seems so important and so real that it fundamentally shapes your interactions with the rest of your family. That's what happened here. This was so important and so real to Rebekah that it fundamentally changed the way she interacted with her family. She had to make this happen because it was so important. So she does what she thinks she needs to do, perhaps, or she does something to try to change the outcome. And I'm curious, as I read this story, why did she choose this method? She goes into a very elaborate deception, an extremely elaborate lie and role-playing and game-playing here with lots of risk. There's a lot of risk in this. She's playing a very dangerous game. And I'm curious why she did this method. Why did she choose to lie to Isaac instead of go to him and say, Isaac, sweetie, I think you're making a mistake here. You know what? Esau is a mess. You know it and I know it. And God said Esau needs to serve Jacob. I just really wish you'd reconsider this. She could have done that. Maybe she'd done that for years and Isaac hadn't paid attention. We don't know. But for whatever reason, rather than something like that, rather than even broaching the subject with Isaac, she says to Jacob, all right, we're going to have to fool your dad here. We got to change this outcome, so we're going to fool your dad to do it. Something that happened here that's interesting too is Jacob objected. He said, whoa, wait, Mom. I don't think that's such a good idea. But what was it? Do you remember what the grounds were for Jacob's objection? Why did he think it wasn't a good idea? He might get caught. He didn't object on moral grounds. Mom, we shouldn't lie to Dad. That's just not right. I don't feel good about lying to my dad. No, that apparently never crossed his mind. We don't know. He never said that. He said, oh, Mom, I don't think this is a good idea because I might get caught. And if I get caught, I'm going to be in trouble. I don't want to be in trouble. We're going to see as we study the rest of Genesis, this character trait of Jacob's comes up again and again and again and again. He doesn't seem to have any kind of moral compunction about lying and cheating. And we see it here. And maybe this is where it came from. You know, it's always interesting in people when there's something that's true of a person later in life, you wonder, was it shaped by something that happened to him back then, or is this just the way they were? I don't know. Was Jacob just this way all the time, and Mom just kind of fanned the flames, or did Mom create this in him? I don't know. But we definitely see Jacob objects, but only because he thinks that he might get caught. And then Rebekah says something that I suspect she regrets for the rest of her life. Do you remember what she says in response to that? Let the curse fall on me. If this goes wrong, let the curse fall on me. Before we get to the end of this story, we're going to see that start to play out in ways that I don't think Rebekah anticipated. And I think as we get into the further ramifications of this, I'm guessing that if Rebekah could go back, she would say, oh, no, because the curse falls on her. And it falls hard. It falls hard. But in a moment, because this is so important, I'm going to do something, and I'm not thinking about the future at all. And this is going to come back and fall on her in some terrible ways, I think. So Rebekah and Jacob plan this grand deception, and they think about it. Isaac is blind, says he's old and blind, and he must be really blind. I mean, you know, completely blind, because they don't try to cover up Jacob's face at all. They don't try to change his appearance much at all, but they try to trick all of Isaac's other senses, don't they? They try to trick the rest of Isaac's senses. First, it's the taste. Okay, Rebekah says, I know the kind of food Esau is going to make. I know what Esau is going to make. Maybe she taught Esau the recipe. Maybe she's seen him make it, but she knows exactly what Isaac is anticipating. She says, I can mimic that. I'm going to do something that matches the taste that Isaac is anticipating. He's going to touch you, you're right. So let's trick that. And so it's just interesting that goat skin felt like Esau. You ever pet a goat? Go to the petting zoo and pet a goat and think, this is Esau. That's a hairy, rough dude. Goat skin and goat hair is not pleasant, but that's what apparently Esau was like. And so, hey, we're going to have to gauge that, so let's do that. We'll put it on his arms and the back of his neck. They thought about that. That's a sense that Isaac still has. Let's trick that. They tricked his smell. We're going to see this in a minute, but putting Esau's clothes on Jacob made him smell like Esau. And it's true. I can smell my wife on the pillow that she sleeps on. And that's just, all of us are like that. And I love it. I'll put my head on her pillow, and that's my darling. I can. Well, Rebekah thought about that. You're gonna need to smell like Esau. Here, put this on. You'll smell like him. We're going to see, too, that I think Jacob speaks like he thinks Esau is going to speak. In other words, he uses words that he thinks Esau is going to use. We're going to see that here in a minute. But Jacob and Rebekah put on this elaborate scheme. We got to fool your dad. He can't see, but he can do all these other things. He can hear and taste and touch and smell. We got to trick all his senses. And so they went to this elaborate scheme to make it happen. All right, let's keep going. Verse 18. So she sent him in. So he went to his father. Jacob went to his father Isaac and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac asked his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" "The Lord your God gave me success," he replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so I can touch you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." Jacob went close to his father Isaac, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, for his hands were hairy, like those of his brother Esau. So he blessed him. "Are you really my son?" he asked. "I am," he replied. Then he said, "My son, bring me some of your game to eat, so that I may give you my blessing." Jacob brought it to him, and he ate. And he brought some wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come here, my son, and kiss me." So he went to him and kissed him. When Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of the field that the Lord has blessed." Okay, so Jacob goes in and he pulls it off. Jacob pulls off the deception. But it's interesting here how it went. I think Jacob started with a safe opener here. He went in, he had the goat skin strapped to him, he's wearing Esau's clothes, he's got the game, but his dad can't see him. And he walks in, and his opening line is, "Father, my father." That's safe. That's a safe opener. Because if Isaac says, "Yes, Jacob, what do you need, buddy?" "Okay, the game's up." "Nothing, just passing through. I'm going to eat this food with hair on my neck." But he doesn't say that. Esau or Isaac, when Jacob says, "My father," Isaac says, "Who are you?" Okay, so now he's got an opening. Isaac is suspicious. We see that 3 times in here. He says, "Are you really my son Esau?" He's suspicious. Isaac is suspicious, but Jacob has to commit. Jacob has to commit because he says, Isaac says, after his safe opener, "My father," "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Well, then Jacob had to go whole hog. Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn." So now he's into it. Now he's into it completely. And all of the things that Rebekah and Jacob conspired to do to fool Isaac, all of them worked. The goat skin worked. He thought, "Oh yeah, this feels like Esau." The food, yep, that tastes right. Tastes like the wild game. This is what Esau makes for me. This is the kind of thing that he and I have together. That's right. The smell, yep, you smell like Esau. I can smell the open fields on you, and that's what Esau smells like. We're going to see in the next little section how Jacob mimicked Esau's words. In other words, the words that Jacob says here are exactly the same words that Esau uses next. And I think Jacob thought about that. I'm going to talk like Esau would talk. Everything checked out. Isaac was suspicious, but everything that he could muster, all of the tests that he put this to, checked out. And he thought, well, I guess you're really Esau. So then, once Jacob pulls the deception off, Isaac gives him his blessing. Verses 28 and 29. "May God give you of heaven's dew and of the earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." So he gives the blessing. And that's a good blessing. You know, heaven's dew and the earth's richness. May God give you an abundance of grain and new wine. In other words, he's speaking over, he thinks it's Esau, but he's speaking over Jacob. You're going to be wealthy. You're going to be cared for. Your lot in life is going to be very good. Abundance and richness and all of the goodness of the earth is going to be yours. You're going to be in charge. Nations and people are going to bow down to you. Your brothers are going to serve you. He's giving a very wonderful blessing. He thinks he's giving it to his older son Esau, but he's giving it to his younger son Jacob. Now, it's interesting that this is not exactly the same as the promise that God gave to Abraham and Isaac. It's not exactly the same. The blessing is given, but it's not the promise. We'll get to that here in a minute. But it's a little bit different than the promise that God gave to Abraham and Isaac. But regardless, Jacob pulls off the deception and the blessing is given. All right, now, the story's not done there. So let's keep reading. I'm going to read verses 30 through 40 here. It says this, after Isaac finished blessing him, and Jacob had scarcely left his father's presence, his brother Esau came in from hunting. He too prepared some tasty food and brought it to his father. Then he said to him, my father, sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing. His father Isaac asked him, who are you? I am your son, he answered, your firstborn Esau. Isaac trembled violently and said, who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me too, my father. But he said, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. Esau said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? He has deceived me these 2 times. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. Then he asked, haven't you reserved any blessing for me? Isaac answered Esau, I have made him lord over you, and have made all his relatives his servants, and I have sustained him with grain and new wine. So what can I possibly do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. Then Esau wept aloud. His father Isaac answered him, your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck. All right, so here we see now the deception is revealed. Isaac and Esau discover the deception. And their responses are interesting. It says that Isaac trembled violently and Esau cried bitterly. Some commentators, in fact, this guy here brings up the thought that some commentators think that Jacob probably really knew, or not Jacob, Isaac probably really knew that it was Jacob and not Esau, and that he did it because he really in the back of his mind knew Jacob's the one that should get God's blessing. I like Esau better, but I'm just going to let this go because it gives me an out. I don't think that's true, because when it gets laid bare here, Isaac trembles violently and Esau cries bitterly. I think they both were fooled, and I think I think Isaac was fooled, and he realizes now what happened. And Esau, 3 times Isaac had said to Jacob, are you really my son? Here now, 3 times Esau says, bless me too. Bless me too. Do you only have one blessing? Give me a blessing. 3 times he cries out. He's begging his father for something, which shows me again that Esau and Isaac believe that this is a real thing as well, not just Rebekah and Jacob. Remember we talked about that earlier. Rebekah and Jacob believed that this blessing was going to change the future. Esau believes it too, because he's crying out for it. If I don't get it, I'm really in trouble. I need your blessing, otherwise my future is in trouble. He believes it, and he thinks his brother has stolen it, and he can't get it back. Isaac now here assigns blame to Jacob, which is interesting. How does he know it was Jacob now? Maybe he had his suspicions all along, but he says, oh my gosh, you're Esau? well, your brother just came in and stole your blessing. How did he know it was his brother? How does he know it wasn't a servant or something like that? I think Jacob is starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together here. You know, that sounded like Jacob when he came in. But the darn kid lied to me and fooled me. And I was fooled. But here's the most interesting thing that I see about this. Isaac can't apparently, in his mind, take the blessing back and give it to Esau. It's too late. It's been given, and it's done. Why didn't Isaac say, Jacob, get in here. You rotten kid. No, give me that blessing back, and I'm giving it to your brother. It's almost like, no, I gave it to him, and he spent it, and it's done. It's gone. There's nothing I can do about it. It's been given to him, and he has it, and that's all there is to it. And then he kind of doubles down on Esau. Oh, not only did I give your blessing, I had wanted to sustain you with heaven's abundance and make you Lord over everyone. Well, I gave that to Jacob, so now here's your deal. You're going to go live away from abundance. You're going to serve your brother, and you're going to hate it. And someday you're going to run away from him. It's almost like Isaac doubles down. This went from bad to worse for Esau. Not only did you not get the blessing, Esau, but life is going to just be hard and bad for you. And both of them believed it. I mean, both of them believed this is the reality now for Jacob and for Esau. So, finishing the story up, verse 41, Esau decides he's going to do something about this. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob. Esau has a plan for revenge. I've had it with this guy. Stole my birthright, stole my blessing. I'm going to wait till dad dies. I don't know if that's out of respect for his dad or if he thinks his dad he'll get into trouble, but I'm going to wait for Isaac to die, and then I'm going to kill Jacob. And I suspect in the back of Esau's mind, there's several reasons to kill Jacob. One is he just probably hates him at this point. But I think then he thinks, you know what, if I kill him, I'm going to get my birthright back. All the stuff that would have been Jacob's, I'm going to get it. I'm going to inherit everything from dad. I can undo these things that have happened. I'm going to get my birthright back. And maybe he thinks I can recover the blessing. If I kill Jacob, maybe I'll just step into his place. We don't know for sure, but at least we know Esau wants to kill him. Enter Rebekah one more time. This is not a good Mother's Day message. Because Rebekah doesn't come across as being too great here. Verse 42 of chapter 27. When Rebekah was told what her older son Esau had done, she sent for her younger son Jacob and said to him, your brother Esau is consoling himself with the thought of killing you. Now then, my son, do what I say. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. When your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, I'll send word for you to come back from there. Why should I lose both of you in one day? Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I'm disgusted with living because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, from Hittite women like these, my life will not be worth living. So Rebekah has a plan now to protect Jacob. She's heard that Esau wants to kill him, and so she has a plan to protect him. And it's interesting. She says she thinks Esau will forget. That's what she says. Your brother's fury will subside, and someday he'll forget what you did for him. And I think, goodness, I don't know that he's going to, but actually, when you read the rest of the story, Rebekah might have known her son Esau better than we think. Years from now, when Jacob comes back, it seems like Esau had forgotten. And Rebekah maybe knew, you know what, Esau is a wild kid, but this is going to pass by. Don't know for sure, but she says, he'll forget, I'll come get you. But then she says an interesting thing. She says, why should I lose both of you on the same day? Think about that. What does that mean? Here's what I think it means. She doesn't want to lose Jacob, and if Esau kills her, obviously she knows that she'll lose him. It could have been that if Esau kills Jacob, then Esau is going to have to be killed, and she'll lose both of them. That could be the case. I think there's something else. I wonder if now Esau has recognized that his mom was in on this, and she has lost her relationship with her older boy, and he hates her. I don't know that, but I wonder. If so, the curse is falling already. The curse is falling on Rebekah already. I have already lost my older son. He's gone. And I have you left, and he wants to kill you. Don't know that for sure, but I think that's what's happening here. I think this is starting to unravel on Rebekah before the ink is even dry on the blessing. The curse is starting to happen. So her plan is to manipulate her husband again. Instead of going to Isaac and saying, look, this is a mess. I had a huge part in this. I am so sorry, but it's clearly unraveling. Esau wants to kill Jacob. We have to do something. Let's send Jacob away. She doesn't say that. She says, you know what? He needs to get married. The boy needs to get married. Send him away to my in-laws so he can find a wife there. That may have been true, but again, she's manipulating her husband. Because remember, Isaac didn't like Esau's wives either. It says that both Isaac and Rebekah were grieving over these Hittite women. So she's trying to play, I think, on Isaac. Instead of being honest and upfront with him, she's manipulating. She's lying. She's kind of doubling down on this thing. So now, verse 20 or chapter 28, we're almost done here. So Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him and commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Paddan Aram, to the house of your mother's father, Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now live as an alien, the land God gave to Abraham. Then Isaac sent Jacob on his way, and he went to Paddan Aram to Laban, son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, who was the mother of Jacob and Esau. So Isaac sends Jacob away. Just a couple things here. I'm surprised we don't see anywhere that Isaac is angry with Jacob. You just don't see. In fact, what you see is now Isaac gives Jacob the promise of Abraham and Isaac. You see that? And instead of saying, you dumb kid, I'm so mad at you. I can't believe you did that. Look at the mess you created here. None of that. It's, you know what? I want you to marry well, son. So go get a wife from over here. And by the way, may God just bless you. All of the promises that God gave to Abraham, all the things that I, your dad, Isaac, have been living my life by, that your grandpa Abraham lived his life by, all these wonderful promises, this fulfilling, meaningful thing that God himself has spoken to our family, may all of them rest with you, you lying dirtbag. It's an odd dynamic. He skips the lion dirtbag part and just gives him the blessing, and he's not angry. I don't know if I know exactly what that means, but it is part of the dynamic. Finally, last couple verses here. Now Esau learned that Isaac had blessed Jacob and had sent him to Paddan Aram to take a wife from there, and that when he blessed him, he commanded him, do not marry a Canaanite woman, and that Jacob had obeyed his father and mother and had gone to Paddan Aram. So Esau then realized how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac, so he went to Ishmael and married Mahalath, the sister of somebody, the daughter of someone else, in addition to the wives he already had. Esau doubles down. Remember how this started? What was the first thing we looked at in this story? Esau's wives are a source of discord to Isaac and Rebekah. The very last thing we see in the story, I'm going to get some more of them. He's sticking it to his mom and dad. That's what it says. When he discovered, you don't like my wives? Well, watch this. I'm bringing more into the house, and I'm going to make your life miserable. This family is spiraling down. This family is spiraling out of control. Okay, deep breath. That's the story. Now, next week, we're going to look, there's probably all kinds of lessons here. We're going to look at 2 next week, and here they are. Family matters. Family matters meaning it's important. How your family is an incredibly big thing in God's world. God uses family to impact people and to impact societies. Family is important to God. It matters. We're going to see how this family, the things that happened there, impacted people negatively, and we can learn lessons about that because God speaks to us about a lot of the things that went wrong here. That's the first thing we're going to look at. The second one is this: God's plan, God's way. I think both Rebekah and Isaac wanted to do what God wanted to do. They saw where God was going. You want to bless our descendants. You're going to do an amazing thing. But then both of them thought, I know how to get there. Yep, I'm all in on your end result, God, but we're going to do it my way. The problem was Isaac's way was one way, Rebekah's way was another way. I don't think either way was God's way. It's good for us to be all in on God's plan. We also have to be all in on God's way. We're going to look at that next week. Let me pray. Father, thank you that you speak to us through this. This was a lot, Lord. I just pray that we would contemplate this, let you speak to us as we chew on these things. And Lord, we want to understand you. We want to understand ourselves. So I pray that this story, you would use it, your Spirit would use it to speak to each one of us. And next week when we chew on this some more, Lord, give us clarity about what we can do, how we can live our lives here, really to grow in our relationship with you and to be a blessing to the people around us. I pray for that, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.